A few years ago, a major female celebrity in the West, in the United States, named her child Rumi. Then, some people ask themselves, what is Rumi? What is Rumi? Not who is Rumi. And many of us knew already. Not only us, so many other people knew who Rumi was. What we are going to talk about tonight is the story of Rumi, the formation and the shape of the character of the universal King of Love. There was, and there still is, a beautiful city on the border between Afghanistan and Tajikistan called Balkh. Back then and now, part of what we call Greater Khorasan, Khorasan Buzurg. There was born a boy called Jalaluddin. His father was called Bahauddin, but the people nicknamed him Bahawalad. He was a moderate religious scholar. What do we mean by moderate religious scholar? We mean he was not a radical religious scholar. He had mystical inclinations. What do we mean by mystical inclinations? Spiritual tendencies, trying to get to the heart of the teachings of religion, trying not to be attached to the external surfaces and shells of religion. Bahawalad was a major scholar in his own town, Balkh. So it was only natural for him to try to bring his son up in his own way. The son was playing in the gardens. Just imagine how beautiful the gardens should have been, north of Afghanistan, south of Tajikistan, beautiful trees, apple trees, the beautiful sun, the mountains. This is an area which is famous for introducing and producing eminent people in the world of spirituality. One of them is said to be the founder of the Islamic Sufism, Ibrahim Adham. He came from Greater Khorasan. He is said to be the one who laid the foundations of Tasawwuf, or spiritual Islam, or Islamic mysticism. But believe it or not, this place has produced other people from other religions who became very prominent and played eminent historical roles. One of them, as it is narrated, was a man called Bodhidharma. He came from the same region. He traveled to China and he met the Chinese Buddhism. He realized that the Chinese Buddhism, based on him, was not the true Buddhism that had been introduced by Buddha. So he started preaching the true Buddhism. He was from the same area, Khorasan, Greater Khorasan. He managed to set the foundations of what is called now Zen Buddhism. And also, unbelievably, because his Buddhism was based on practice and exercise, physical exercise, he is said to be the father of Kung Fu. So in that area where those great people came to existence, Jalaluddin was playing in the gardens, in the alleyways, on the streets, dirt roads. He was carefree, but his father was in trouble. When you become prominent religious scholar, there must be, there should be, there will be rivalry, competition, jealousy. The people don't want to see someone better than them, greater than them, superior to them, seen as grander than them in the eyes of people and eyes of the king. So Baha Walad, the father of Jalaluddin, was in trouble because the people were going to the king and saying that this guy is now very powerful and he may pose a threat to your authority. The king was troubled himself. Do you know why? Because back then he had to be a king and he had also to look for the Mongol invasion. Genghis Khan, he had started his attacks from the east towards the west, pillaging, killing, ransacking, committing genocide wherever he went. The king, Khwarazm Shah king, he was from the Khwarazm Shah dynasty. He was worried. He had all these concerns of being a king, and everybody wants to be a king. There are people who are struggling to topple him. Next to all that, he knew that he couldn't resist the Mongol invasion. So he had no time for these concerns. He called Baha Walad and he said, we cannot be together in the same place. And Baha Walad was surprised because he didn't seek power. A mystic, a spiritual master never seeks power. He has power, but the power lies elsewhere. Do you remember what Jesus said to the Roman emissary? He said, even though I am a king, but I'm not a king of this world. My kingdom is in heavens. Nevertheless, Baha Walad had to leave the city. And he said to the king, I leave my own homeland, but be careful and take care and know that only in God you can find solace. The kingdoms will come and go. Baha Walad took all his family, the camels, the horses, and left his own town. Traveled through Afghanistan, which was not Afghanistan back then. It was an area resided by people of Persian origins, and went to all these areas that we know central Iran. He traveled to Neyshabur. A story happened here in Neyshabur. They said when Baha Walad was holding his son's hand, i.e. Jalaluddin. Jalaluddin was very young. They met in the bazaar, the marketplace, a man. He didn't look very smart in his appearances, but he was carrying a number of books. The man approached them and he said that, are you Bahauddin and is this your son Jalaluddin? And he said, yes, how do you know us? He said, I have heard about you. And I would like, in the way of showing courtesy, to introduce myself. I am Attar of Neyshabur, the man who is known as Attar Neyshaburi. Baha Walad recognized him. He was famous. He was a mystical poet. He had beautiful poetry. The poetry was widespread and broadly known. Baha Walad said, and as you see, if you are a teacher, I do not know how many of you have ever been teachers. After 2 or 3 days, or sometimes the very first day, you look at the face of your student, you see the intelligence, the way he looks at you, the way he listens to you, the way he responds to your questions. You realize that this is a person with a great deal of readiness to embark on a journey of learning. Attar said to Baha Walad, your son is going to be a great person. He is going to succeed all the mystical masters who came before, and he is going to be even greater than all of them. And he said, I would like you to do me a favor. I would like you to receive this book. This is my book of poetry. And he handed his book called The Epistle of Secrets, in Farsi, Asrar Name. He gave it not to Bahawalad, the father, he gave it to the son, the young boy. The young boy was thrilled. A major scholar, a major poet, a major mystical master, giving him. So he started looking at the book with astonishment, surprise, and admiration. Some people say that this was the point when the love of writing poetry was planted in the heart of young Jalaluddin. He traveled again with his father, trying to go further and further away from the place the Mongols were going to invade. So they went to Baghdad, and then they went to Mecca to offer to perform pilgrimage, and then they traveled north, and some people say they even went to Malta. And after that, their final destination was Anatolia, which is part of Turkey. They went to this area. They resided for a few years in one of the little towns until they were invited by Alauddin Kayqubad, who was the ruler of this city, the famous city that some of our friends have traveled to, Quniya. They went there, they were received. Rumi started settling down and receiving formal education from his father and from his other scholars, But unfortunately, the father, who had hoped that one day his son would succeed him, didn't live to see his son succeed him. He died. One of his disciples, Baha's disciples, looked after Jalaluddin, and for a few years he sent him to Damascus. Damascus, a major center of learning and scholarship. Some people say that he met the greatest Sufi of all time, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, in Damascus. But this is not proven. Yet, it is not possible for someone to be in Damascus, and there is a great scholar living there, and he seeks knowledge, particularly the esoteric knowledge, but not to know about that person. Nevertheless, he came back. He had become established scholar in theology, which is called kalam in Islam, philosophy, fiqh, which is law and principles of law, jurisprudence. He started teaching in madrasa and was a great alim, a great beard, greater than mine, with all the gear, everything needed. The people looked up to him, glorified him, and he lived a life of luxury. He would move around the town on his horse, surrounded by disciples who admired him, adored him, and to some extent worshipped him. One day, and that is where we come to the enthronement, he became the king. One day, when he is on his horse, coming out of the cotton market, Bazar Pambe, then he saw this man, a dervish, very, very low life looking, no good clothes. The beard was not like combed, no turban, nothing. He said that he is probably one of the beggars, until the dervish approached him, came close to his horse, and took the horse, and said to him, "Are you Jalaluddin Maulana?" He said, "Yes, of course, I am." You know, some of us are like that. "Are you the great such and such?" And we say, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Yes, I am." He said, The dervish said to him, "What do you teach?" He said, "I teach my father's books, and I teach the books that my father told me to teach. I teach the books of the scholars. I narrate the hadiths from the Prophet, from the people who were centuries before me." And the dervish said to him, "Are those people alive?" He said, "No." He said, "What are they talking about? Or who are they talking of?" He said, "They are talking of God." He said, "Are they alive?" He said, "No, none of them are alive." He said, "Is God alive?" He said, "Yes, God is alive." He said, "Why don't you talk to him? Why don't you ask him to tell you the truth, to tell you the facts?" And then he had this moment, being a pure heart, he had this moment that he felt that he had not established a link with God. He had established link with scholars, the people on the pulpit, the people who addressed, gave good lectures, but he didn't establish a kind of relationship with God that he could say, "I am divinely inspired. I feel that God wants me to do this." Instead of this fatwa, this said that, who said that, I'm doing this because he said that. The people sometimes, some of these people, they give us opinions. They prove later on that they were wrong. They admit they were wrong. But nevertheless, based on this story, as it is narrated, he felt shaken inside, moved inside. Then, from that day on, Maulana turned into Rumi, the man of music and dance. The people, the terminology that is being used is for them, they call sama, for music, and the kind of whirling that the dervishes do. What is sama? Usually saying those people who are familiar with the way the Sufis act, they say sama is dancing to some rhythm of some music, but in fact sama is listening. Sama is listening. Sama is listening. Al-masma, the ear. So what is the link between sama and the whirling? What is the link between listening and dancing? The link is that there is a music. There is a music around us. You need to listen carefully. If you listen carefully, you will listen and perceive, fathom. Fathom is understanding deeply. You will hear the music of nature. We say nightingales, we say those birds chirping, but actually everything is singing to the praise of the Lord. Everything. The stones, the inanimate object, animated objects, the animals, the human beings, simply by being there, they are singing. And that song is so exciting and so thrilling. You need to listen by the ears of your heart. That is called sama. When that happens, then there is an excitement inside you. You feel the world is beautiful. This is the creation of the Lord. And this is the place where the Lord has manifested himself. And this is a place for joy and happiness. So this is called sama. From that day on, Rumi was another person. He found that excitement, that elation inside him. That elation was the foundation, was the fountain of all the poetry that came out. Mathnavi is one piece, a small piece of the Maulana's poetry, Rumi's poetry. Greater piece is Divan Shams. Why is it called Divan Shams? Because the dervish he met was called Shamsuddin, and he was from Tabriz, Shamsuddin Tabrizi. They had a retreat with each other. They spoke about these things. Shamsuddin Tabrizi opened the doors to him. He thought that if he knows the philosophical arguments, if he knows the chapters of law, fiqh, this ahkam, he is the best. He knows all these things. Those who do not know are nothing. But Shamsuddin told him, sometimes these are the cover, the hijab. The hijab or the cover that keeps your ears from listening to the music of the nature and the universe, your eyes from seeing the beauties, from seeing black and white, not in color. So he became a man of poetry, became a man of music, and he still preached what he preached before. Why should we call him the King of Love? Because his main approach in mystical experience, spiritual experience, was that love is the key. Love is the solution. Still, there is some ambiguity about the nature of love. Some people say like the love of somebody for somebody else. Some people say it was a divine love. And some people even have difficulty understanding what's the nature of the divine love. Loving God or loving the universe. How could somebody fall in love with that? But love is love. Love is subject to gradation. It comes in ranks, rates, degrees. The love that we have for each other, father for his son, is a kind of love. The one the man has for a woman, another kind of love. But when it is upgraded, evolved, and gets to the highest degree, ascends to the realms of the divine presence, that is the divine love. That is where you will become one with the universe.